Guerschon Yabusele is the key to this offseason for the Philadelphia 76ers. What he decides to do and how much money he gets paid will determine what happens throughout the rest of the 76ers off-season period. We're going to dive into all that and what it means for both Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre. But before we do, taking an updated look at our sub-battle between some of our NBA channels here at Chat Sports. Last time we took a look at this, Sixers now was in third. We have since dropped to fourth, about 23 subs now behind the Miami Heat report. Of course, still trailing Warriors today and Knicks. Now, we got to make a comeback. Only one way we can do that. That's by you hitting that sub button. You get plenty of Sixers news all year long. So lock us in and let's get into today's show. As I mentioned, Guerschon Yabusele and what he does in free agency is a key to this Sixers offseason. And I do believe that bringing back Guerschon should be at the top of the Sixers priority list this offseason. It's been a great story with him coming into Philadelphia after being out of the NBA for so long. And look, this season he has been tremendous, playing both at the 4 and small ball 5 with the injuries to Embiid and Andre Drummond. 50% from the field and 40% from 3 for a player whose main concerns when he got drafted to the NBA was his three-point shooting ability. He's shown plenty of versatility. He can rebound the ball. He can put it on the deck a little bit. He's been great for the Sixers, and I think a player that they want to keep around long-term to see how he can fit next to Joel Embiid, because we didn't get to see a whole lot of that this season. But things get a little tricky when you start to actually look at the salary implications and the way the NBA has now made contracts have to go with the new Apron rules. Yabusele was on a one-year deal this season, of course, a one-year prove-it deal as he made his return to the league. And because he was only with the Sixers for 1 year, they don't have his full bird rights, so they could only offer him 120% of his previous salary. He was on a minimum salary this year. Obviously, Guerschon has outplayed that number, so he's going to be looking for higher than just 120% of that number. The other option the Sixers can do to re-sign him, because they're, of course, going to be over that salary cap, is to use one of the exceptions to sign him. So we're going to dive into the two different ways and two different exceptions they can use and how that will impact the rest of their potential offseason moves. So first, got to set the foundation here on the show. These are the projected salary cap, first apron, second apron numbers for next season. The salary cap projected to go up to about $154 million. That first apron projected to be $195.9, and then the second apron, $207.8. I'll reference these numbers again because these numbers are going to be important when you consider how much money Yabusele gets and where that puts the Sixers. So just keep some of these numbers in mind as we move forward. Of course, none of these are quite official just yet, but more likely than not, these will be the projections. Now again, that salary cap at $154, when you take Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Jared McCain's contracts for next season, that already puts the Sixers at $149.1 million, very close to that salary cap. Now, of course, you can go over the salary cap. That's why these aprons exist and with re-signing guys. But clearly, just those 4 players who are going to be on this team next year are taking up a large chunk of your salary, leaving the Sixers with not too much flexibility to build out the rest of the roster. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 different exceptions that the Sixers can use to re-sign Yabusele because they won't have his bird rights to go over the cap to re-sign him, and they obviously don't have enough open regular cap space to re-sign him either. So there are 2 options. They can use the taxpayer mid-level exception. This is for teams who are in the luxury tax, and it allows them to keep a player, but you can see it's only $5.7 million. Guerschon Yabusele is probably going to want to outplay that and outgain that much money. The other option is the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is also available to the Sixers as they're below the luxury tax. That's a little bit better at $14.1 million. Now, the problem with using each of these exceptions, which again, the Sixers will have to do in order to keep Guerschon, is that when you use these exceptions, you get hard capped at a certain salary number. What that means is for the upcoming season, you cannot go over that amount at all during the year, no matter what. And this is at the first and second apron. So if the Sixers use that cheaper exception, the taxpayer mid-level exception, they'll be hard capped at the second apron, about $208 million. If they use the more expensive exception, the non-taxpayer mid-level exception that pays Guerschon $14 million, they'll be hard capped at $196. So you can see the challenges there of using these exceptions and how it limits your ability as an NBA team to sign players to your team. Now, we're going to explore what happens to the Sixers if they use each of these scenarios, because, again, one of these is going to have to be used if they want to re-sign Guerschon. Let's start with the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is the higher priced one, right? The $14.1 million non-taxpayer MLE gives Guerschon more money, which you assume he'd want, right? If they use this, that would put the Sixers at $163 million in salary, in addition to Paul George, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain. That leaves them just $32 million under that first apron, which, again, they'd be hard capped at, meaning they cannot go over that number, with still 10 roster spots to fill. Now, you assume they're going to pick up the team options on Rookie Council, Adam Bona, Justin Edwards. Those are all cheap. That brings you up to about $169 million. So now you have about just under $27 million left with 7 roster spots. And then you assume Andre Drummond's probably going to pick up his player option. Eric Gordon, we'll see, but let's just say he does pick it up. That leaves the Sixers with just $18.2 million available left to fill out their roster with 5 spots left. And you still have to re-sign Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre. And that's where this whole Guerschon Yabusele thing really comes into the fold, because Grimes, Oubre, Yabusele, all guys you're going to want to be able to keep on the team, but because of these financial rules, with Kelly Oubre having a player option that he's probably going to decline, so he'll be a free agent. Obviously, Yabusele is a free agent, and Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent. If you go this route and give Guerschon the more expensive deal, which, again, you assume he wants, I don't think you can sign Grimes and Oubre with that $18 million remaining, so you're going to have to let one of them walk, unfortunately. Now, the other option the Sixers can use to try to keep all of them is to use the taxpayer mid-level exception, that $5 million exception. But will Guerschon want to do that? If they use it, you would be up to $169 million, and this is including everything I mentioned before. Bringing back, of course, you have Embiid, McCain, Maxey, and Paul George, assuming you pick up the options on Rookie Council, Justin Edwards, Adam Bona, and assuming Drummond and Eric Gordon accept their options. That leaves you with $38 million left, as opposed to the $18 million left to re-sign Grimes and Oubre. That's much more realistic there, because, of course, Kelly Oubre, what he's done for this team over the past couple of years, he's outplayed his $9 million salary, and Quentin Grimes has been hooping for the Sixers ever since he got here from the Dallas Mavericks. So he's earned probably somewhere in the ballpark of $15+ million as well. So I think if you have that 38, that's enough that you have left to re-sign Yabusele, Oubre, and Grimes. And if Yabusele does want to stick around, again, this is the easiest option, and really the only option for the Sixers to keep everybody. They can use that taxpayer mid-level exception, get Yabusele at about $5 million, and then next offseason, sign him to a 4-year, $60+ million deal. It's very similar to what the Sixers' plans were with Kelly Oubre. They did this last year, signing him to that smaller deal, with the idea of this offseason giving him that big deal. Now, of course, with Quentin Grimes coming in and playing well, Yabusele coming in and playing well, that changes things, but it is an option if Yabusele trusts this organization to give him that deal next season after one more year of playing for a cheaper deal. Look, what it all comes down to here with Guerschon is what offers does he get from other teams, and if he does get some more substantial offers from a couple other squads, can you convince him to take a smaller deal to stay here in Philadelphia, the team that really gave him his second chance in the NBA? It's very interesting. We're going to talk more about some other routes and other teams that could possibly be a threat to steal Guerschon away, as well as what Guerschon had to say about staying in Philadelphia. But real quick, before we do, got to tell you guys about a great deal on this sweet 76ers polo over through our friends at Fanatics. If you like looking good, if you like big deals, if you like saving money, then go get this polo right now, because it was $85. It is now just $63 if you use our link chatsports.com patreon.com/76polo. I'm going to have that in the comments section and the description of today's show, so you can easily click on it. Go get yourself a polo, and there's plenty of other merch as well if you use that link that you can find for the Philadelphia 76ers. So again, chatsports.com/76polo. Be sure to get it before that deal does run out. So I mentioned there are really two teams that are threats to give Guerschon a bunch of money, because the Brooklyn Nets and the Detroit Pistons are the only two teams that are projected to have real cap space this upcoming offseason. Every other team could really only offer Guerschon one of those exceptions that we mentioned with the Sixers. So if one of these two teams here does offer Guerschon a big bag, somewhere maybe in the $18 to $20 million range, I think that's probably a little bit of an overpay, but they had the money to do it, especially for a team like Detroit, who's been very much improved this year and could be looking at Guerschon as a piece to help them contend further in the East. It's going to make things very, very difficult for the Sixers to keep him, because they're going to have to convince Guerschon to take less money to stay in Philadelphia, which is Philadelphia even a better situation than Detroit right now? I'd say it's better than Brooklyn, but Detroit, they're looking good, man. The good thing is Guerschon does sound pretty happy with his time in Philadelphia and potentially re-signing with the Sixers this offseason. Yabusele was asked about his time in Philly, and this is what he had to say. I've enjoyed being here, and I'm always thankful to the franchise for giving me my second chance to come back to the NBA. It was really important for me to try to stay here and achieve our goals. This was really important for me. He was talking about the trade deadline, possibly him getting traded. Obviously, he did not. I have no idea how this will be, but I'm pretty excited to see these summer coming and see what we'll have on the table. Of course, it's going to be a long conversation, not something I'm going to think about overnight. I'm going to take my time, see what the options are, but having that option and chance to be back here is definitely something I'd love to hear. Obviously loves his time here, but look, Guerschon Yabusele, if I'm him, this is your second chance. Not many players get second chances in the NBA after being out for as long as he was. Do you just take the money and the long-term financial security? That's probably the route I would go if I'm Guerschon Yabusele. So if I'm the Sixers, and to my fellow Sixers fans out there, I'd be prepared to lose either Quentin Grimes or Kelly Oubre, because again, you're going to be hard capped. Nothing you can do to go over that number. Going to be $18 million to share between Grimes and Oubre. There's a chance Grimes gets $18 million on his own, maybe even more, again, if a team like the Pistons or the Nets is desperate enough. So as much as I love what Kelly Oubre has done for this team over the past couple of years, he plays hard every single night, even this season, with all the ups and downs and how difficult it's been for this team. He has showed up and played his ass off every single game. He's an embodiment of what Philadelphia basketball should be, but Quentin Grimes is younger. I think he offers a more dynamic skill set on the offensive side of the ball, and I think he would be the priority for the Sixers if they had to make a decision between the two in this year's free agency. That's just my opinion, though. What say you? Pick one. If you were in this situation, and you're the 76ers, and you could only re-sign either Quentin Grimes or Kelly Oubre, who would you pick? Give me a QG in the comment section for Grimes, or a KO in the comment section for Kelly Oubre. That's all I got for you guys today here on the show. The offseason is going to be here before you know it. I know it's been a rough year for the Sixers, but it's going to be a very, very big offseason. So be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you never miss a thing.